Mike Babcock is out before he ever got started as the head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. He resigned after an investigation was launched into complaints from players who took exception to being asked to show their own personal pictures from their camera rolls. It all raises questions about how much latitude the boss has to pry into your private life. Well, with more on that, let's bring in employment lawyer Daniel Lublin with Whitten and Lublin Employment Lawyers. Thank you so much for joining us. Daniel, I'm curious, I mean, does this kind of cross over into bullying? What's your take on this?
It definitely could be bullying, and in this case probably was, because you had someone in a position of authority and power making a request to see people's personal cell phones. And I want to be clear about this. Your personal phones and personal pictures are out of bounds. They are never in play unless there's a good reason to bring them into play. And in this case, you had someone in a position of authority asking to see people's private pictures, personal pictures. I can't see a legitimate or genuine reason for doing that. And some people may have felt that was offside, and all it takes is one person to complain.
If you're, I mean, let's put this into kind of everyday situation for not just, NHL players, but for anyone working in a work setting where their boss might want to pry into their private life. What's your advice to them moving forward if they get approached with that question?
Oh, you should say no. If we're talking about a personal cell phone, personal pictures that haven't been published online, and someone in a position of authority says to you, I'd like to see that, you have every right to refuse. That's your personal property. And if you're made to feel uncomfortable for your refusal, or if you feel like you've been retaliated against, you should treat that a serious form of bullying or reprisal. So in my opinion, it's harassment, it can be bullying, and all it takes is one person to feel uncomfortable, and that's enough to cross the line.
I'm curious, given Mike Babcock's history and some of the claims that have been made against him from other players, they've accused him of being a bully, someone who attacks people, that has been verbally abusive. I mean, you can just do a quick Google search and see a ton of players speaking out about his coaching style. I'm curious, from a legal standpoint, did he do anything illegal here, or is it just something that rubs people the wrong way? And he resigned and said it would be his presence would be a distraction. But did he necessarily do anything illegal?
It's an invasion of privacy, and it's an invasion of privacy because obviously some players felt it was offside and felt at least uncomfortable enough to make an issue of it. Some players backed it and said they didn't have a huge problem. Because he's in a position of authority, he's a boss or an executive, he's the manager, he controls playing time. That could have serious ramifications for players who refuse to hand over their phones. So it's a civil matter. In my opinion, it's an invasion of privacy. It could be cause for dismissal if we were talking about a regular workplace. But the NHL is a workplace, and players are workers. And you know what, Jamie? The world has changed a lot in the last couple of years. Feels like Babcock hasn't adapted.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because we've clearly seen, bullying become front and center in the media for many years now, and what might have gotten a pass several years ago, a decade ago, doesn't necessarily get a pass now. What's your advice to employers out there and employees when it comes to these kind of awkward situations when employee doesn't necessarily know what to do, whether they'll be punished for not doing what the boss wants?
Jamie, the world has changed in significant ways, and in particular as it relates to bullying and harassment in the workplace. There's all kinds of new laws now dictating how employers have to ensure that workers feel safe and comfortable in the workplace. There should be policies in place. In this case, there's an NHL players union that people could have complained to. So like I said before, the world has changed, and it feels like Babcock hadn't adapted.
Daniel Lublin, employment lawyer with Whitten and Lublin. We always appreciate your time and perspective. Thanks for joining us.